A shocking radio leak between Norris and Piastri just exploded online, and now McLaren is under official FIA investigation. The message allegedly reveals pre-planned positioning in qualifying that may have illegally blocked Verstappen's final lap. If confirmed, this could result in grid penalties and Verstappen might get handed a front row seat without even lifting a finger. Subscribe right now, because this isn't just another radio drama. This could decide the final race of the season before it even starts. What should have been a clean and straightforward qualifying session at the Yas Marina circuit has turned into one of the most dramatic controversies of the season. Just minutes after the session ended, a radio exchange between McLaren's Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri surfaced online, one that was never broadcast during the session and was absent from the FIA's official public communication logs. That alone raised eyebrows. But once the contents were heard, the situation escalated instantly. The message appeared to confirm coordinated tactics between the two drivers right in the middle of Q3. The leaked audio reportedly includes Norris asking if they were holding position, followed by a cryptic message from Piastri's engineer instructing maintain delta, plan echo in effect. That phrasing alone was enough to spark suspicion, but when placed in the context of the outlap phase of Q3, when drivers are managing tire temperatures for a flying lap, the implications are enormous. If McLaren used coded instructions to coordinate track position in a way that interfered with another driver's preparation, it could represent a direct violation of Article 27.4 of the sporting regulations. The FIA wasted no time. Within an hour of the leak gaining traction across social media and independent news outlets, the governing body confirmed a full investigation into McLaren's radio communications during qualifying. Officials requested unedited radio logs, complete GPS traces, and all available throttle and brake telemetry from both cars. This kind of urgent reaction signals that the FIA views the incident as more than just a misunderstanding. It's being treated as a possible case of qualifying interference. Why does this matter so much? Because Max Verstappen was the immediate victim. On his final Q3 outlap, Verstappen was running directly behind both McLarens. He later reported tire temperature issues and understeer into Sector 2, resulting in a lap that was 0.2 slower than his previous best despite being on better track conditions. Red Bull engineers immediately suspected traffic and outlap coordination, and now, with this leaked radio message, they believe they have the evidence to support their protest. The timing couldn't be more critical. This is the final Grand Prix of the season. Verstappen is chasing a clean win to lock in what could be one of the most statistically dominant campaigns in F1 history. But starting behind both McLarens complicates that path unless penalties are handed down. If the FIA concludes that McLaren used coordinated tactics to alter the running order or disrupt a rival's performance, they have the authority to delete laps or issue grid drops. Either scenario places Verstappen directly into the front row battle. Inside the paddock, reactions have been split. Some rival teams have remained silent, waiting for the FIA's verdict. Others, including insiders from Ferrari and Mercedes, have privately acknowledged that coded team orders in qualifying have become increasingly common but rarely caught. This time, though, the evidence is public, the radio is real, and the investigation is underway. It's no longer about speculation, it's about compliance, fairness, and the integrity of the sport's most precise session. For Verstappen, the mood has shifted from frustration to opportunity. What was originally seen as a compromised Q3 session might now be reversed in his favor. If either McLaren car is penalized, Verstappen moves forward. That changes his entire strategy for Turn 1, for tire management, and for clean air control. In a race where DRS trains and track position decide outcomes, that's everything. And all of it, every possible gain, comes from a few words hidden in a radio message the world was never meant to hear. Max Verstappen came into qualifying at Abu Dhabi expecting a front row start. His pace throughout the weekend had been consistent, especially in the low-fuel simulations during FP3. Red Bull had fine-tuned the RB21 for the high-speed corners of Sectors 2 and 3, where Verstappen was expected to make the difference. But when Q3 reached its final moments, something clearly went wrong. Verstappen's final lap was slower than his first despite track evolution and the team's forecast showing the track was at its absolute best. The data tells the story. Verstappen's Sector 1 was already marginal, with his minimum speed through Turn 3 down nearly 4 km/h compared to his Q2 lap. But the real drop-off happened in Sector 2, where both entry and exit speeds through turns 6 and 7 were consistently low. Red Bull's post-session analysis revealed tire surface temperatures had dropped below the minimum threshold by the time Verstappen crossed the line. That means the tires were cold not because of setup but because of how slowly he was forced to run on the outlap. Why was he slow? Because directly ahead of him, both McLaren cars Norris and Piastri were moving in sync, holding a narrow delta that prevented Verstappen from finding clean air. According to GPS overlays, the McLarens reduced pace simultaneously through turn 7 on the outlap and delayed full throttle until well into turn 11. That pattern of coordination mirrors the timing of the leaked radio message that is now under FIA scrutiny. The result was Verstappen running in dirty air with tires cooling by the second, unable to execute the prep lap he needed. That small disruption had massive consequences. Verstappen's final lap left him 2/10 behind Norris and Piastri, despite being faster through the speed traps. In essence, he had the power, but not the grip. If the McLarens had maintained standard outlap behavior or if Verstappen had been granted clear air, he would have likely outqualified at least one of them. Instead, Red Bull was forced to settle for second-row positioning in a race where clean air is strategic gold. Now, with the FIA investigating the leaked team orders, the potential consequences could change everything. If the stewards determine that McLaren's message was part of a coordinated plan to manipulate track position and indirectly impede Verstappen, grid penalties could be issued. That would elevate Verstappen on the starting grid, possibly even to the front row, just by virtue of a regulatory decision. The irony? The same interference that cost him time may now gift him the track position he needs to dominate from the start. The potential advantage is enormous. Verstappen, starting behind two cars that might be penalized, is currently boxed into a tactical corner. If even one McLaren is moved back, Verstappen's side of the grid opens up. That changes the braking line into turn 1, improves tire preservation in the opening laps, and grants Red Bull a superior undercut strategy if pit stops come early. In a track where overtaking relies on DRS and rhythm, gaining position before the first corner could dictate the entire race outcome. More importantly, this shift would restore balance. Red Bull believes their qualifying plan was solid undone not by performance failure, but by manipulated positioning. If the FIA enforces a penalty, it sets a precedent for fairness in qualifying tactics. Verstappen's celebration isn't arrogance, it's relief. Relief that what happened on track is now being acknowledged off it. And if the ruling falls in his favor, it won't just affect Abu Dhabi, it'll reshape how every team handles outlaps in the seasons to come. In Formula 1, the outlap before a qualifying push lap is as critical as the flying lap itself. Tire temperature, brake conditioning, and hybrid deployment must be finely tuned for peak performance. Drivers follow preset delta targets to ensure their tires hit an exact thermal window, typically within 1 or 2 degrees of the optimum temperature. Miss that window by even a small margin, and the tires either overheat or fail to grip, especially in the high-speed turns that dominate modern circuits like Yas Marina. What's unique about Verstappen's case is how that warm-up procedure was compromised. As confirmed by Red Bull's telemetry, Verstappen was running behind both McLarens during Q3, and his tire temperatures fell by over 3 degrees Celsius during the outlap. That's not a setup issue, it's a result of airflow disturbance and forced slower cornering speeds, especially through turns 5 to 9. When two cars in front hold a synchronized pace below expected thresholds, it creates an aerodynamic wall of dirty air that ruins the grip profile of the car behind. The FIA uses several tools to detect and confirm this kind of behavior. GPS overlays compare car positioning at every split point on the circuit, while throttle and brake traces show whether a driver is coasting or accelerating naturally. In this case, if Norris and Piastri both lifted or coasted in identical parts of the lap, especially after receiving a team instruction like hold gap or plan echo, it indicates a controlled tactic. That's what elevates this from a coincidence to a possible violation of sporting code. Under Article 27.4 of the FIA sporting regulations, any driver who unnecessarily impedes another during qualifying may be subject to investigation and penalty. The key word here is unnecessarily. If McLaren instructed their drivers to slow in a way that indirectly affected Verstappen's outlap, even without direct blocking, it could still fall under this clause. The regulation was designed not just for wheel-to-wheel contact, but to protect the integrity of qualifying as a fair,
open time trial format.
This isn't the first time outlap manipulation has sparked controversy.
In 2023, Alfa Romeo received reprimands for orchestrating slow formation laps that affected rival drivers. In 2024, Mercedes was investigated for coded messages that led to double-stack timing advantages. The FIA has made it clear that strategic communication, especially during qualifying, must remain within the bounds of sporting fairness. If McLaren's message can be interpreted as a coded attempt to control track position and impact a competitor's prep, it may cross that line. What makes this case more serious is the fact that the message in question was never aired during the session.
Its late leak raises concerns about transparency.
The FIA typically reviews all team radio, but if a message slips past public broadcasting and only surfaces through leaks, it undermines trust in the monitoring system. Now, the FIA must not only investigate McLaren's intent, but also evaluate how such communication wasn't flagged earlier, especially in a session where track positioning was so sensitive. For Verstappen, this moment has become a symbol of a broader issue.
In a sport defined by microseconds and perfect execution, even the smallest interference can tilt the balance.
This investigation isn't just about one lap, it's about how far teams are willing to push the limits of radio communication to gain an advantage. If McLaren is penalized, it sends a clear message to the grid: coded strategy during qualifying outlaps will no longer be tolerated, especially if it alters the outcome for a title-contending driver.